Native Americans experienced several changes, but also were able to keep some aspects of their lives the same during this period of 1800 to 1860. During this time, Native Americans began to be treated even more unfairly and were severely oppressed by the United States more than ever before. Native Americans experienced social, economic, and political changes. The United States began to rely on northern industry, slavery moved towards abolition, Americans were consumed with westward expansion, and they adopted a Jacksonian democracy that emphasized the common man. With this changing culture came changes for the Native Americans as well. Although Native Americans continued to be part of a hunter-gatherer society, there were many more changes because of the Indian Removal Act, ceding of Indian land after the War of 1812, the Battle of Tippecanoe, and the Second Seminole War, which further put natives under American rule. The Indian Removal Act was a large change for the American Indians. Under President Andrew Jackson, the American Indians were subjected to forced removal, which is the forcible relocation of American Indians. Before 1804, Native American tribes were able to reside wherever they wanted to legally. The first official notice from the United States government for tribes to move west of the Mississippi River was given during this year. It was not until 1821 that the 5 civilized tribes Cherokee, Creek, Seminole, Choctaw, and Chickasaw began to be forced west, and not until 1830 that the Indian Removal Act was passed by Jackson, officially calling for the removal of tribes. In part of this policy, the American Indians who resided in mid-eastern to eastern territory were conflicted with leaving their homes. Additionally, a majority of Native Americans were angered with the idea that the United States government could control their livelihood, forcing them to adapt in lands foreign to their people. As Native Americans were forcibly removed, their experience became known as the Trail of Tears, because thousands died on their trek to the newly established Indian territories. Never before had the government made a law to keep the Native Americans in one place, so this change was a very big one. The Native Americans also suffered from rape, murder, imprisonment, and physical brutality if they refused to comply with American demands. The ceding of Indian land after the War of 1812 was a major change for the American Indians. The War of 1812 caused the American government to heavily reform Native American policies. As a result, the United States compromised hundreds of treaties that would result in the cession of Indian lands. The ceding of Native American territory created reservations west of the Mississippi River for the American Indians involved. By 1853, California had confined Indians, leaving them to live in military reservations where they experienced terrible living conditions. The state of California contained more than 150 natives in 1849. After this period of severe treatment and enslavement, only 30,000 Native Americans remained. Because of these and other events, Native Americans had to adopt new methods of living, and changes in their culture occurred as they lived on reservations. Although the Native population ultimately complied with American policy, the movement to the reservations would be part of future conflicts. The Second Seminole War further changed the way the natives interacted in American society. From 1835 to 1842, the United States government and the American Indians were engulfed in battles that hold relevance to land disputes. The Native Americans were unhappy with their relocation to the north of Lake Okeechobee. As a result, they resisted American policy for an extended period of time, forcing the American military to become involved with land affairs. The American Indians fought endlessly to retain their homeland, causing the American government to expend thousands of soldiers and $40 to $60 million. There are many accounts of Native Americans being defeated in battle against U.S. troops, countless times. In the Battle of Tippecanoe, Tecumseh and his Confederacy were destroyed along with the town they had founded. There were several other battles during this time period where tribes rebelled against the United States government. In the end, every time the U.S. was victorious over them. From the Battle of Tippecanoe to the Navajo War, the Native Americans were always defeated. By losing these battles, the power of Native Americans was diminished greatly because of their small size and strength compared to the U.S. During this time period, the Native Americans increased in their dislike towards the United States because they were forced to comply with policies that did not consider their people. Thus, many more American Indians became active in resistance during this time period. In the United States history, the American Indians underwent many changes during 1800 to 1860. As Americans became more selfish in their demands, the American Indians suffered great hardship. Ultimately, through the Indian Removal Act, the cession of land after the War of 1812, the Battle of Tippecanoe, and the Second Seminole War, the Native Americans developed a more distinct culture.